The median household income in the United States is often cited as a symbol of stability, a benchmark that represents what it means to live a comfortable, middle-class life. At roughly $83,000 per year, it suggests a level of financial security that should, in theory, provide access to housing, transportation, healthcare, and a modest degree of leisure. For decades, this number has been associated with the promise of the American dream, a system in which hard work leads to a stable and predictable standard of living. Yet the reality experienced by millions of households today tells a very different story. Despite earning what is statistically considered a solid income, many families find themselves navigating constant financial pressure. Instead of comfort, they experience constraint. Instead of security, they face uncertainty. The gap between expectation and reality has widened to the point where the median income no longer guarantees what it once did. An income of $83,000 might sound substantial, but once taxes are applied, the actual disposable income drops significantly. Federal income tax, payroll taxes, and state taxes, depending on location, can reduce take-home pay to somewhere in the range of $60,000 to $65,000. This is the real budget that households must manage, and from this pool, every essential expense must be covered. Housing is typically the largest and most unavoidable cost. While national averages suggest a manageable percentage of income goes toward housing, these averages mask extreme regional variation. In high-demand urban areas, housing costs can consume well over a third of a household's income. Renters, in particular, are often under significant strain, with millions spending more than half of their income just to secure a place to live. The concept of affordable housing, traditionally defined as spending no more than 30% of income, has become increasingly difficult to achieve. Transportation is another essential expense that is often underestimated. In a country where infrastructure is heavily oriented around personal vehicles, access to employment frequently depends on owning a car. Costs associated with vehicle ownership, including financing, insurance, fuel, maintenance, and registration, can easily add thousands of dollars per year. For many households, especially those with multiple working adults, a second vehicle is not a luxury, but a necessity. Healthcare represents one of the most complex and burdensome components of the modern household budget. Even with employer-sponsored insurance, workers are required to contribute a substantial portion of premiums. Beyond that, deductibles, copays, and unexpected medical expenses can create additional financial strain. A single health-related issue can disrupt an otherwise balanced budget, pushing families into debt or forcing difficult trade-offs. Childcare further compounds these challenges. For families with young children, access to reliable care is essential for maintaining employment. However, the cost of childcare has risen dramatically over time, often rivaling or exceeding housing expenses in certain regions. What was once an informal or family-based arrangement has evolved into a major economic burden, particularly in dual-income households. What is striking about these categories, housing, transportation, healthcare, and childcare, is that they are not discretionary. They are the fundamental costs of participating in modern economic life. These are not areas where households can easily cut back without significant consequences. As a result, financial flexibility becomes extremely limited, even at income levels that were once considered comfortable. Against this backdrop, the official poverty line appears increasingly disconnected from lived reality. At just over $31,000 for a family of four, it defines the threshold below which families are considered unable to meet basic needs. This figure is used to determine eligibility for a wide range of assistance programs and plays a central role in shaping economic policy and public perception. However, the methodology behind this number dates back to a very different era. Developed in the 1960s, it was based on the assumption that food accounted for roughly one-third of household expenses. By calculating the cost of a minimal food budget and multiplying it by 3, policymakers established a baseline for poverty. At the time, this approach reflected the economic structure of American households reasonably well. Since then, the composition of household spending has changed dramatically. Food now represents a much smaller share of total expenses, while housing, healthcare, and childcare have grown significantly. Despite these changes, the underlying formula for calculating poverty has remained largely unchanged. adjusted primarily for inflation rather than structural shifts in spending. This creates a situation where the official poverty line measures something closer to extreme deprivation rather than the broader concept of financial struggle. It identifies those who are in the most severe economic circumstances, but fails to capture the growing number of households that are financially fragile despite earning well above that threshold. Attempts have been made to address these limitations. Alternative measures incorporate additional factors such as tax credits, geographic cost differences, and necessary expenses. These approaches provide a more comprehensive view of economic well-being, often revealing higher levels of hardship than official statistics suggest. However, they have not replaced the original benchmark in most policy applications. One of the most significant consequences of this outdated framework is the structure of public assistance programs. Eligibility for many forms of support is tied directly to income thresholds. While this system is designed to target resources efficiently, it can produce unintended effects. As households increase their income, they may cross eligibility thresholds and lose access to benefits. In some cases, the loss of assistance outweighs the additional income, resulting in a net decrease in financial resources. This phenomenon, often referred to as the benefits cliff, creates a disincentive for upward mobility and places households in a precarious position. Families caught in this gap earn too much to qualify for assistance, but not enough to comfortably manage the full cost of essential services. They exist in a space that is largely invisible in official data, not classified as poor, yet far from financially secure. The broader economic environment has intensified these pressures. Over the past several decades, key cost drivers such as housing and healthcare have grown faster than wages. While overall economic output has increased and technological innovation has created new opportunities, the distribution of these gains has been uneven. Globalization and technological change have reshaped labor markets, creating high-paying opportunities in certain sectors while reducing stability in others. The result is a more polarized income distribution, with growth concentrated at the top and increasing strain in the middle. At the same time, financialization has transformed key aspects of the economy. Housing, for example, is no longer just a basic necessity, but also a major investment asset. This shift has contributed to rising prices and increased competition, particularly in urban areas where demand is highest. The experience of the pandemic highlighted the extent to which household budgets are shaped by structural costs. Temporary reductions in commuting, childcare, and other participation-related expenses allowed many families to accumulate savings for the first time in years. This was not solely due to increased income, but to a reduction in the baseline costs required to function within the economy. When those costs returned, often at higher levels, the financial pressure resumed. Rising interest rates, increasing insurance premiums, and continued growth in healthcare costs have reinforced the challenges facing middle-income households. Despite these realities, traditional economic indicators often present a more optimistic picture. Income levels have risen, unemployment rates have fluctuated within manageable ranges, and overall economic output remains strong. However, these metrics do not fully capture the lived experience of financial strain. The distinction between income and affordability has become increasingly important. Earning more does not necessarily translate into greater security if the cost of essential goods and services rises at a faster pace. This dynamic reshapes how households make decisions about spending, saving, and long-term planning. As a result, many individuals delay major life milestones. Homeownership becomes less accessible, family formation is postponed, and career risks are avoided. These decisions have broader implications for economic growth, demographic trends, and social stability. In the long term, the sustainability of the economic system depends not only on aggregate growth, but on the alignment between income levels and the cost of living. If this alignment continues to weaken, the gap between statistical measures and actual experience will widen further. The United States remains one of the most advanced and productive economies in the world. Its capacity for innovation, its scale, and its institutional framework provide a strong foundation for continued growth. However, the challenges facing middle-income households highlight the need for a more nuanced understanding of economic well-being. Ultimately, the question is not simply how much households earn, but what that income allows them to achieve. Financial security is not defined solely by income thresholds, but by the ability to meet essential needs, absorb unexpected shocks, and plan for the future with confidence. As economic conditions continue to evolve, the metrics used to measure success must evolve as well. Without this adjustment, the disconnect between policy, perception, and reality will remain, shaping not only individual experiences but the broader trajectory of the economy itself.